The other thing that you really notice by her absence is that of Melania, that often men caught up in situations like this have a wife who's loyal.
The other thing that stands out in all of this is the absence of Melania Trump. Often, when men are caught up in situations like this, there's a wife loyally standing by, but loyalty, in Melania Trump's case, only exists when interests align. This is not about whether. Now that the Epstein bomb has detonated and the media is publicly claiming she was heavily involved, she will leave her husband. The real question is how and when she will end the marriage. Asterisk, she is never by his side. Through all of those courtroom appearances, did she show up even once? I reported in my book that when one of the aides approached her, she laughed and said, "Nice try." Asterisk, now, this is probably a matter for further investigation. You should know, she was very involved in the Epstein situation. There's the whole modeling connection. Epstein himself has spoken about this, how she was introduced to Trump by a modeling agent that both Epstein and Trump were associated with. Epstein knew her well, in fact. He claimed the first time Donald Trump and Melania had sex was on Epstein's airplane. Asterisk, this is important. You should be aware that Melania was deeply entangled in the Epstein circle. That modeling agent serves as an example in Epstein's own accounts. The introduction to Trump came through someone both men were closely connected to. That's how she met Donald Trump. Epstein asserts their first sexual encounter happened mid-flight. She was someone Epstein knew intimately. Asterisk, Melania's betrayal of Trump won't come in the form of a loud, dramatic press conference. That's not her style. Instead, it will be subtle. A quiet knife in the back, hidden by a flawless performance. It will play out behind closed doors, leaked rumors, sealed testimony, and legal deals in exchange for protection. She plans to rewrite the fairy tale, only this time, Trump becomes the monster she must escape from. Asterisk, why would she do this? Because the narrative she's built her life around is crumbling. And this scandal threatens to destroy Trump's entire empire. Asterisk, her public image is built on a story she carefully crafted and released on her own terms. I met Donald during a party at New York Fashion Week in 1998. I didn't give him my number, I was classy. That's the official version. But journalist Michael Wolff and others have reported a much darker reality. One that unfolded in the shadows of New York's underground fashion scene. A world where teenage models were put on display for the elite. Asterisk, this wasn't an oversight, it was an illusion, one carefully constructed. And Melania, an experienced manipulator, is terrified of watching it all unravel. Asterisk, she didn't fall into a passionate relationship. She entered an ecosystem, one built by predators. Trump and Epstein were more than friends. In that world, people weren't just associates, they were property, shared, exchanged, inherited. Asterisk, in one divorce-related anecdote, someone said, "You're going to see us all the time, we're a match set." In the divorce, I got Trump, and Ghislaine got Ivana. You won't see him at home like you see Ivana. And you won't see her at the office like you see Trump. It was an open secret among staff they were best friends. Asterisk, Melania learned quickly how things worked in that environment. Her instinct has always been self-preservation at any cost. Asterisk, when the Access Hollywood tape came out, exposing Trump's disgusting language, she didn't flinch. She dismissed it as locker room talk. A calculated move to protect their mutual investment, the Trump brand. Asterisk, she said, "I have two boys at home, my son and my husband. I know how some men talk." It wasn't the voice of a betrayed wife, it was the voice of a partner protecting her stake. Asterisk, later, when the Stormy Daniels scandal broke, she wasn't angry at Trump for cheating. Her outrage was directed at Vogue for daring to publish a profile on Stormy Daniels. It wasn't infidelity that hurt Melania, it was the brand damage. Asterisk, let that sink in. Asterisk, I don't think Melania understands emotional torment the way most people do. As crude or sad as that sounds, it's true. Asterisk, I'll never forget she once called me furious and said, "Anna Wintour put the porn hooker in Vogue." I was stunned. "What?" I asked. She repeated, "She shot the porn hooker." Her only concern was that Vogue had dared to feature Stephanie Clifford, Stormy Daniels. Not that her husband had slept with her. Just that the brand had been tarnished. Asterisk, to Melania, values like loyalty, honesty, and integrity are luxuries. What truly matters is strength, image, and above all, survival. Asterisk, but the Epstein case is not about affairs or locker room talk. It is a federal criminal investigation into child sex trafficking and organized network, involving some of the most powerful people in the world. And Melania, she could be caught in the crosshairs. This is an existential threat. Asterisk, and Melania is terrified. Asterisk, she sees her husband sinking. The Republican Party, her lifeboat, is full of holes. They're trying to cover something up, but doing it so clumsily that they're only exposing themselves. Asterisk, why wouldn't they want this information hidden? But here's the problem. House Republicans have subpoena power. If Donald Trump and Pam Bondi claim there are files, then either they are world-class liars or they are hiding something very serious. And we deserve to know what. Asterisk, should there be a special counsel? I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. But I am disgusted. I've had enough. Asterisk, I want truth. I want clarity. I want transparency. Asterisk, meanwhile, the American people caught in this brutal power struggle continue to suffer. They are deprived of trust, wounded by corruption, and divided by hatred. They are furious about the two-tier justice system where regular people struggle with inflation and rising costs, while others seemingly get Einstein visas for modeling. Asterisk, where is the integrity? Asterisk, why aren't my Republican colleagues asking questions about the First Lady's visa? Last I checked, she didn't have the accolades that normally qualify someone for that honor. You don't need to be Einstein to know that the math isn't adding up. Asterisk, this outrage is metastasizing, and now the very credibility of the justice system is on the line. Asterisk, when politicians deliberately sow doubt and when citizens begin using mobs to demand justice, the fabric of a nation begins to unravel. Donald Trump is fighting imaginary enemies, while the real threat may be standing right next to him, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, quietly sharpening the knife. Asterisk, she knows too much. And in the brutal game of survival, information is the most lethal weapon. Asterisk, the Epstein storm is tearing off the mass of the elite. The individual who survives this chaos won't be the strongest. It will be the most cunning, the most ruthless. And Melania Trump has proven herself more capable in that domain than almost anyone else. Asterisk, the fatal blow may not come from a political rival. Instead, it might be delivered by the very person who helped him build this empire of lies, someone who knows all the secrets and now faces the terrifying possibility of going down with him in a race to the bottom within Trump's inner circle. Asterisk, for Donald Trump, that would be the cruelest ending imaginable. And it would also be a perfect symbol of an America that has lost faith in the race altogether. Asterisk, there has always been fierce competition for the title of worst official. But just as Pam Bondi was clinging to that distinction, Pete Hegseth made sure she couldn't win by getting himself embroiled in a scandal so explosive it led to a shocking dismissal from the Pentagon. Asterisk, our investigation now turns to a recent leak, not just a tremor in the system, but a direct threat to every American citizen. Asterisk, the most serious suspicions were confirmed by a Department of Homeland Security memo made public after it was discovered that a hacking group known as Salt Typhoon, believed to be backed by China, compromised the entire network of the National Guard, the final line of defense on U.S. soil. Asterisk, this was not just a breach. It was the culmination of systemic failures unfolding under Pete Hegseth's leadership from March to December 2024. The attackers didn't just spy on the system, they infiltrated it. Asterisk, they gained a foothold inside the network and stole something more dangerous than military secrets. They didn't just collect phone numbers or emails, they obtained network schematics, administrator login credentials, and root access to defense infrastructure. Anyone with even basic technical knowledge could understand the gravity of this breach. Asterisk, the master keys to the kingdom are now in enemy hands. They have the entire blueprint of our homeland defense systems and the ability to sabotage them. Asterisk, imagine a natural disaster, wildfires in California, floods in Texas. The National Guard is the first responder, or during civil unrest, they are deployed to restore order. Now, imagine that force being rendered useless. That's the nightmare we face. Asterisk, the Department of Homeland Security memo emphasizes that critical infrastructure is not an abstract concept. It includes asterisk water treatment plants that supply your drinking water, asterisk hydroelectric dams, asterisk telecommunication systems, asterisk the financial network, asterisk and the electrical grid that keeps hospitals running during crises, asterisk. If those systems are attacked, no one will come to save you. Asterisk, America has learned some hard lessons about infrastructure vulnerabilities in recent years. The 2021 ransomware attack on Colonial Pipeline showed how the failure of a single pipeline could cause widespread gas shortages and panic across the East Coast. The attack on JBS, one of the world's largest meat processors, disrupted the food supply chain and caused prices to skyrocket. Asterisk, but those cyber attacks were motivated by money. Asterisk, now imagine a state-level adversary with virtually unlimited resources, not just trying to steal or extort, but aiming to cripple the very forces meant to protect us. Asterisk, this is no longer hypothetical. This is a digital Pearl Harbor. Asterisk, and the American people will be paying the price for years. Asterisk, even though the breach lasted for over a year right under Pete Hegseth's watch. He is still responsible for this catastrophic failure. Asterisk. Asterisk, he and the administration were preoccupied with media battles, political purges, and cultivating personal loyalty. Cybersecurity, an area that requires constant vigilance, sustained investment, and deep expertise, was treated as a nuisance. The result was an environment rife with security vulnerabilities, fueled by mass resignations, inexperience, and a preference for loyalists over trained professionals. Asterisk, individuals who could have identified or stopped the attack were likely fired, ostracized, or sidelined, simply because the culture valued sycophants over competence. Asterisk, this incompetence didn't just operate in the shadows, it was put on full display. During a congressional hearing, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was publicly questioned by Representative Seth Moulton, a former Marine officer who served for tours in Iraq and sat on the House Armed Services Committee. Asterisk, this clash coincided with growing dissatisfaction over the Trump administration's mishandling of military threats in the Middle Peninsula. Asterisk, you don't know the number, it's 8, Moulton snapped. Can you explain why any of them were fired? Why was the Army JAG fired? Why did you fire him? Asterisk, they all serve at the pleasure of the president, Hegseth responded. Asterisk, I'm not asking you if they serve at the pleasure of the president. I'm asking you why. General Kane is a great example. Why did you fire him? You probably learned at Princeton what why means. Asterisk, they serve at the pleasure of the president. And we want better representation in each of those roles. Asterisk, so you can't explain why you fired any of them? Asterisk, this exchange revealed a stunning truth. The man leading the Pentagon agency, managing the largest defense budget in the world, was unable or unwilling to account for critical personnel decisions. Asterisk, at the time, he seemed unaware of even the cost of a major military campaign, despite boasting about the operation's success. Not a single American commercial ship dared pass through the region. Billions of taxpayer dollars were wasted on a campaign that brought no real economic or security benefit to the American people. Asterisk, the constant fallback, they serve at the president's pleasure, is a damning admission. It symbolizes how the Pentagon, once led by national security experts, had become a presidential political tool, wielded for optics rather than outcomes. Accountability was no longer tied to policy or performance. The only person whose approval mattered was Donald Trump. Asterisk, this is the playbook of authoritarian regimes. They'll fire 8 generals and admirals for not being loyal enough to the ruler in the White House, but won't offer a single explanation. Asterisk, what does that say to the American people? Asterisk, it reveals that national security is at risk when military decisions are driven by political loyalty rather than strategic judgment. This undermines the military's integrity, once the pride and protector of the nation. When that institution is corrupted, soldiers' lives and the nation's defense are sacrificed for loyalty. Asterisk, and it doesn't stop at our borders. Asterisk, now the military is being turned inward, used against the very people it was meant to protect. Asterisk, in another session, Senator Elisa Slotkin, a former CIA analyst, challenged Hegseth over the deployment of the National Guard to Los Angeles to suppress protesters, a move that violated long-standing democratic norms. Slotkin voiced strong opposition to the decision. Asterisk, the mass exodus of senior Pentagon officials is another symptom of this moral and professional collapse. Asterisk, a sobering headline read, Pete Hegseth loses another top aide. Asterisk, talented professionals are fleeing what they describe as a sinking ship. A Defense Department insider called it a total collapse. Skilled advisors and experienced staff are being replaced by devoted but incompetent yes-men people who obey orders without question or understanding. Asterisk, this kind of blind obedience is dangerous. Asterisk, Hegseth dismisses serious questions about the use of lethal force. He avoids direct answers. He disregards the warnings of predecessors. He treats accountability like an inconvenience. Asterisk, but this isn't just about publicity stunts. The deployment of U.S. military forces into American communities is part of a deliberate strategy. Normalize the military's presence in civilian life. Asterisk, the goal is to condition the public to make it seem natural to see armed soldiers roaming their neighborhoods. Asterisk, this is not protection, it's intimidation. It is meant to silence dissent, sow fear, and suppress free expression. Asterisk, when military presence becomes normalized in everyday civilian life, The message is chilling. The very institution meant to defend your rights is now monitoring your right to protest, assemble, and speak freely. Asterisk, this violates the Posse Comitatus Act, a cornerstone of American law passed in 1878 after the Reconstruction era, which prohibits the use of federal military forces as domestic law enforcement. Asterisk, when an American civilian sees a soldier on the street, they should feel protected. Instead, they now feel afraid, worried that they could be the next target of the very force sworn to protect them. Asterisk.